You ever have one of those moments where something tiny turns into the biggest storm of your life? Well, imagine sipping a cold lemonade on a quiet Sunday morning, gently swaying on a porch swing you built with your own hands, when suddenly a voice screeches, "That swing is a violation." That was the day everything changed, and it was the moment Karen declared war. My name's Alex, and all I wanted was a peaceful home in a quiet neighborhood. I built a simple wooden porch swing, the kind that creaks in the best nostalgic way. My daughter loved sitting there reading after school. My wife called it her mini vacation spot. It was wholesome, harmless, beautiful. But then there was Karen, the self-appointed HOA sheriff. She marched onto my property like she owned the law, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on like some budget mall cop. "You didn't submit a structural modification request," she snapped. "It's a porch swing, Karen," I laughed. That was my first mistake, because Karen didn't just hate porch swings. She hated people being happy without her permission. 2 days later, I got an official violation notice demanding I remove the swing immediately. A $200 fine came with it. I thought it was a joke, until another letter came, and another, each one angrier than the last. But there was something strange. Neighbors had porch decor, pergolas, even entire deck additions, yet none of them ever faced violations. It wasn't about rules, it was personal. Karen had picked a target, and that target was me. When I refused to remove it, Karen escalated. She started patrolling my yard. She photographed my family. She emailed threats at midnight. And then she showed up with a contractor and told him I had approved demolition. He swung a hammer at my porch column before I stopped him. That's when I realized this wasn't about a swing. It was about control, money, and secrets buried in HOA paperwork. And Karen? She wasn't just enforcing rules, she was profiting from them. That night, I sat on that swing thinking about every threat, every smug smile Karen flashed as she taped another notice to my door. Why was a simple swing such a big deal? Then a neighbor slipped me an envelope. No name, no note. Inside was a photocopy of an HOA invoice, thousands paid to a preferred contractor, the same contractor Karen brought to tear my swing down. And the approval signature? Hers. It wasn't just harassment anymore. It was corruption hiding in plain sight. Now, you ever pull one tiny thread on a sweater and suddenly the whole thing starts to unravel? That invoice was my thread. And Karen? She was the sweater. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the copy. $4,800 paid. From HOA funds to a maintenance contractor to replace safety non-compliant porch attachments. That meant porch swings. But nobody else had been cited. Nobody else had been scheduled for removal. This wasn't enforcement. This was a business. A kickback loop. I needed proof. The next morning, I took a walk around the neighborhood. Not casual, investigative, and suddenly things clicked. The neighbor on Oak Street who had to replace his railing? Same contractor truck I saw at my house. The couple who had to repaint their blue shutters, even though the rules allowed it? Contractor again. These weren't random violations. They were targets. And every violation meant money. The HOA forced homeowners to fix imaginary problems by hiring Karen's approved vendor, and Karen got her cut. I talked to my neighbor, Mrs. Hill, a sweet retired teacher who always brought us cookies during holidays. Turns out she'd paid $200 last summer after. Karen claimed her mailbox post was unstable. She almost cried telling me she thought she did something wrong. It was heartbreaking and infuriating. But I still needed hard evidence. HOA bylaws, meeting minutes, vendor agreements, payment records. So I went to the source, the HOA office. Karen wasn't there, thank God. But the secretary, a nervous guy named Adam, was. When I asked to see vendor records, he froze like he'd just seen a ghost. Then he whispered, "I can't print those." Karen checks the logs. His voice shook. She checks everything. That told me everything I needed to know. Karen wasn't just bossy, she was paranoid. And guilty people are paranoid. Before leaving, Adam slipped something into my hand so subtly it could have been a spy movie. A USB drive. "Don't tell her I helped," he whispered, eyes darting around. I got home, plugged it into my laptop, and opened the files. HOA expense records, contractor invoices, email chains, and then, bingo, a message from the contractor to Karen. Invoice processed. Your share ready. There it was. The smoking email. Proof she wasn't enforcing rules. She was weaponizing them. Extorting homeowners through fake violations to funnel money into her pocket. But exposing her would mean consequences. She controlled fines, rules, power, and people were scared of her. I knew once I moved, there'd be no turning back. But sitting on my porch swing that night, feeling the wood sway under me like defiance, I made my decision. I wasn't going to remove the swing. I was going to remove Karen. Exposing Karen wasn't going to be a quiet move. This wasn't just HOA drama anymore. This was fraud, extortion, and abuse of power. If I slipped, Karen would bury me in fines. Lawsuits or worse, smear me in front of every homeowner. But the evidence on that USB was powerful, and I wasn't backing down. I started with allies. Remember Mrs. Hill? She wasn't just upset, she was furious. When I told her what I found, she grabbed her phone and whispered, "I always knew she was a snake." She called 2 neighbors, who'd also been targeted. Within an hour, 5 people sat on my porch. Not a single one caring about meeting authorization or proper protocol. We weren't an HOA committee. We were a resistance. I shared the files, invoices, emails, payments. When they saw Karen's name tied to contractor kickbacks, jaws dropped. One neighbor, Carlos, who had been fined for a non-regulation fence height, slammed his fist on my railing. "So she profits every time she bullies someone?" he said. "We've been paying her to torture us." The plan formed naturally. We would call an emergency HOA meeting. Legally, homeowners could demand it. We would present the evidence publicly. Not privately, publicly. If Karen tried to hide behind her rulebook, we'd burn the whole rulebook on record. But Karen sensed something. The next day, a violation notice appeared. On my door, this time claiming my landscaping was non-compliant and posed safety concerns. My landscaping, grass and 2 rose bushes. She was panicking, and panic makes villains sloppy. Later that afternoon, a contractor truck rolled up again. Karen stood in my driveway, arms crossed, smirking like she'd already won. "Final notice," she hissed. "The swing comes down today." I didn't yell, didn't argue. I simply said, "Great, because tomorrow, we're having a community meeting about some interesting HOA financial documents." Her face drained. Pure panic. "You're violating procedure," she snapped. "No," I smiled. "You are." She stormed off, but her confidence was cracked. That night, she emailed the entire neighborhood warning them about dangerous misinformation and hostile individuals trying to undermine HOA integrity. It backfired. Instead, more neighbors reached out. Turns out half the community had horror stories. Karen wasn't fighting one porch swing anymore. She was fighting the entire neighborhood. We spent that night planning, printing evidence, and rehearsing every document we would reveal. No rumor, no exaggeration, just the truth laid out clearly. Justice wasn't coming quietly. It was arriving like a hammer. And deep down, I knew Karen felt it approaching, and there was nothing she could do to stop the storm we had set in. The morning of the meeting felt electric. A quiet street turned into a battlefield waiting for the first shot. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to before nodded at me, whispered good luck, or simply gave determined looks. This wasn't my fight anymore. It was our fight. The clubhouse filled fast. Folding chairs scraped. Papers shuffled. A low buzz of anger and anticipation hummed in the air. Even people Karen always scared into silence were here, eyes sharp and ready. Nobody smiled. They didn't come for drama. They came for justice. Then she walked in. Karen. Clipboard, power blazer, sunglasses indoors like she was a celebrity avoiding paparazzi. Except this time, instead of her usual smug grin, she wore a thin, brittle smile. She tried to project control, but her eyes, they were darting. She smelled the end. She cleared her throat dramatically. "Let's get this meeting started." As HOA president, Carlos stood up, cutting her off. Actually, by homeowner statute, a community called emergency session proceeds with homeowner agenda first. Murmurs of agreement rippled. Karen froze. She knew the rule existed. She'd used it before, but now it cornered her. I stood, papers in hand, and the room went silent. "This all began," I said, "because Karen demanded I remove a porch swing. But this isn't about a swing. It's about abuse of power, intimidation, and financial fraud." Gasps. Karen shot up, pointing a trembling finger. "Lies! Defamation! You will be fined for—" I held up the printed emails. Invoice records show thousands in HOA funds paid to a contractor, and emails showing him promising Karen a share. The room erupted. Phones came out. Cameras rolled. Someone shouted, "You took our money?" Karen's voice cracked as she stammered. "Those are stolen records! Violating privacy! You should be investigated," I finished. And timing could not have been more perfect. 2 county investigators walked in. Adam, the quiet assistant from the office, trailed behind them, looking both nervous and relieved. One investigator spoke firmly. "We received a complaint regarding financial misconduct and unauthorized vendor arrangements. We need to speak with the HOA president." Karen's face drained white. For once, she had no rule to hide behind. No fine to threaten. No clipboard to shield her. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I am the HOA." "No," Mrs. Hill said gently, stepping forward. "You were." Applause broke. Not angry cheers, relieved ones. Years of intimidation dissolving in one moment. Karen tried to grab her bag and slip out, but an investigator blocked her path. She slumped into a chair, defeated, all power stripped away. By vote, unanimous, she was removed as HOA president, banned from decision-making. And as she was escorted out, the sun hit her glasses. And for the first time, she looked small. Just another bully whose power evaporated the moment truth hit daylight. A week later, our new board reversed every bogus violation Karen issued. We got our money back. The contractor lost his HOA contract. Adam kept his job. And my porch swing? Still there, still gently swaying in the breeze. The symbol of a neighborhood that finally stood up. I sat on it that evening, my daughter curled beside me, lemonade in hand. Peace restored. Justice served. And for the first time in months, the neighborhood felt like home again. Sometimes it's not the big battles that change everything. Sometimes it's just a porch swing, and the courage not to let someone take it from you. If you enjoyed watching Karen's scam get exposed, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and comment justice served, so we can bring you more real HOA stories like this.